The text came 3 days before Christmas, just as I was wrapping up a major acquisition in my San Francisco office. Rachel, sweetheart, my mother wrote. About Christmas dinner, we think it's best if you skip it this year. Your sister Danielle is bringing her fiancé, a state senator, and, well, we just want to present the right image. You understand, right? Love, Mom. I stared at the screen, heart thudding with that old, familiar ache. Even now, after everything, I was still the family embarrassment. The irony almost made me laugh. My mother had no idea that the lost cause she pitted so much was actually the CEO of Ascend Strategies, one of the most powerful consulting firms on the West Coast. Sitting in my corner office on the 30th floor of the Golden Point Tower, I looked out over the Bay Bridge glittering in the late afternoon sun. The fog was just beginning to roll in. Ms. Lin? My assistant Julia's voice came through the intercom. The board is ready for the international tech acquisition call. Thanks, Julia, I said, adjusting the cuffs of my tailored navy blazer. My heels clicked against the stone tile as I walked to the conference room. I couldn't help but smile. My family still thought I was a freelance consultant living paycheck to paycheck, probably using public transit and shopping thrift. Not that they ever asked. As the video call connected, my mind drifted back 10 years, to the moment it all began. I'd stood in the middle of our family's sprawling Palo Alto living room, trying to explain why I was leaving my junior executive role at my father's company. You're throwing away everything I gave you, he'd thundered. You think you're smarter than everyone else? You'll be back within a year, broke and begging. Danielle had been lounging on the suede sectional, sipping imported tea with that condescending tilt to her head. Rachel's always been the wild one, she'd said, smiling like a Cheshire cat. She just doesn't understand how the real world works. How wrong they were. While they gossiped and climbed corporate ladders, I poured my soul into Ascend. I worked 20-hour days out of a tiny co-working space, skipping meals, skipping sleep, skipping every holiday with family just to make payroll and meet deadlines. I turned one struggling client into 5, then 10, then 50. Now, we were worth billions, and did business with nearly every Fortune 100 firm in the country. Quietly. Strategically. Even Lin and Associates, my father's firm, had no idea who held the reins behind the consulting powerhouse they were courting. A soft knock on my office door pulled me from the memory. Ms. Lin, Julia said, entering with a thick folder. The final contracts from Lin and Associates just arrived. Ready for your signature. Ah. That. The final piece of the irony puzzle. Lin and Associates had been chasing a partnership with Ascend for 6 months, an alliance they needed desperately to enter the Asian-Pacific market. The deal would pour millions into their coffers and save their stagnating growth. They had no idea they were groveling to their own flesh and blood. I picked up my phone and reread my mother's message. Need to present the right image. Just then, an email pinged from Danielle. Hey Rach, Mom told me she texted you. Don't take it personally. Senator Morgan's very particular about who he socializes with, and you know how appearances matter to Mom. Maybe next year, if you've got something to show for yourself, we can include you. Love ya. I set the phone down and looked at the contract. The ink on the deal they were desperate for. The same deal they thought they were landing through charm and merit, unaware that the final say belonged to the daughter they tried so hard to forget. I took a pen from my desk drawer. Then I reached for a red marker instead. And with a single, deliberate stroke across the signature line, I wrote. Declined. Let them maintain their image. I had already built mine. Without them. And I wasn't coming to Christmas. All it needed now was my signature. Julia appeared in the doorway again. Your father's on the line. He wants to confirm details for tomorrow's contract signing ceremony. I picked up the phone, slipping into the cool, detached tone I always used with Lin and Associates. Rachel Mitchell speaking. I used my mother's maiden name professionally, deliberately avoiding any connection to the Lin family legacy. It helped keep things clean. Ms. Mitchell, my father's voice came through, unusually warm, even eager. It was almost unrecognizable, so different from the clipped, cold tone he reserved for his second daughter. Just wanted to confirm everything's set for the signing tomorrow. This partnership means a great deal to us. I thought of my mother's text, Danielle's smug message, years of being branded the cautionary tale of the Lin family. Actually, Mr. Lin, I said smoothly, I'd been reviewing the final documents, and I've identified a few concerns. There was a pause. Then, a tremor in his voice. Concerns? But, the board already approved everything. What kind of concerns? Things change, I said simply. Perhaps we should go over it in person. Why don't you bring your family to the signing ceremony? Lin and Associates is a family business, isn't it? He jumped at the opportunity. Yes. Of course, we'll all be there. My wife, Danielle. All your daughters, I said, cutting him off. Silence. Well, he hesitated. Rachel, she's not really involved in the company. All your daughters, Mr. Lin, I repeated, each word sharp. Or there won't be a signing ceremony at all. After a long, tense pause, he agreed. Then the line went dead. I leaned back in my chair, the San Francisco skyline glowing just beyond the glass wall behind me. Tomorrow, the Lin family would walk into my office expecting to meet the elusive CEO of Ascend Strategies. Instead, they'd come face to face with the disgrace they'd spent a decade writing off. Julia returned one last time. Shall I prepare the conference room for tomorrow? I picked up the contract and ran my fingers along the edge. Yes, I said. And make sure the photographers are ready. I want every second captured, especially when they realize who's been running the show. As the city lights twinkled across the bay, I stayed in the office, fine-tuning every detail. My family wanted to project a flawless image. Tomorrow, they'd meet someone who didn't need one. The morning of the signing, I arrived 2 hours early. The conference room on the 30th floor had been transformed, fresh orchids in low glass vases, sparkling water at each seat, glossy mahogany tables arranged with engraved name cards. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the sun rising behind the Bay Bridge. Julia poked her head in. They just arrived downstairs. Want me to send them up? I walked to the window, checked my reflection. Gone was the drab wardrobe I wore for family events. Today I wore a sharp cream Armani suit, Louboutin heels, and my grandmother's vintage Cartier, her only gift to me, and a silent reminder that someone once believed in my potential. No, I said, adjusting my cuffs. Have them wait. I'd like to make an entrance. 20 minutes later, I was in the private elevator, watching the numbers rise. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Rachel, where are you? Your father says this is crucial. Don't embarrass us by being late. I smiled and slid the phone back into my pocket just as the doors began to open. Time for the big reveal. The elevator doors opened. Through the glass walls of the conference room, I could see them all. My father was pacing, tugging at his tie, nerves unraveling with each minute. My mother stood beside Danielle, adjusting her daughter's already flawless hair. Danielle herself was studying her reflection in the polished surface of a silver tray, no doubt practicing her most charming smile for the mysterious CEO they had yet to meet. Senator Morgan, Danielle's fiancé, sat at the end of the table thumbing through the contract documents with barely concealed boredom. He'd never met me, Danielle had made certain of that. But today, that would change. I gave Julia a small nod. She opened the doors with quiet ceremony. Ladies and gentlemen, she announced, her voice steady and clear, Miss Rachel Mitchell, CEO of Ascend Strategies. The silence that followed was deafening. You could hear the faint whir of the AC humming overhead and the soft echo of my heels against the marble floor. My mother's champagne flute slipped from her hand, the glass shattering as it struck the table. My father's face drained of color, a flush fading to pale disbelief. But it was Danielle's expression that I would treasure for the rest of my life, pure, stunned horror. Her posture collapsed just slightly, like a house of cards catching wind. Her reign had ended. "Hello, family," I said evenly, sliding into the seat at the head of the table. "Shall we get started?" This is some kind of mistake," my father managed, his voice catching. "You're just a small-time consultant." "Am I?" I asked, flipping open the folder in front of me. "Because according to these," I held up the official filings, "I'm the CEO of the company you've been begging to partner with for the past 6 months. Senator Morgan raised an eyebrow. "I'm sorry, but what exactly is going on here?" I turned to Danielle with a bright, insincere smile. "My sister should have introduced us at Christmas dinner." "Oh wait, that's right. I wasn't invited. Something about not fitting the image." "Rachel, darling," my mother finally spoke, her voice falsely sweet, "there's been a terrible misunderstanding." "Has there?" I cut in sharply. I pressed a button on the sleek conference table. A large screen on the wall lit up, displaying a timeline of text messages and emails. "Let's review. Here you are, telling me I wasn't successful enough to attend family gatherings. Here's Danielle suggesting I was a black mark on the Lin family name. And here," I paused dramatically, "is Dad, your esteemed CEO, practically begging for this deal. Never realizing he was negotiating with his disgrace of a daughter." The room was frozen. Julia silently passed out folders, updated copies of the contract. Or rather, what remained of it. My father rifled through the pages, his hands trembling. These aren't the same terms we agreed to." "No," I said pleasantly. "They're not. I've made a few adjustments. See, I've had time to reflect on this partnership. Years, actually. Plenty of time to consider how I wanted this moment to unfold." Danielle finally found her voice. "You can't do this. Dad's been working on this expansion for months. The board is counting on it." I turned toward her, and this time I didn't smile. "You mean the way I counted on my family's support when I was starting from scratch? Or the way I counted on basic decency at the dinner table?" "It was different," my mother said, her voice trembling. We wanted to protect you from failure." "No," I said flatly. "You wanted to protect your image. Well, congratulations. You've done just that." I paused, letting the weight of my next words settle. After today, the whole business world will know exactly who the Lin family is. I rose slowly, brushing down my jacket as I prepared to walk out. "As for the partnership." "The partnership is off," I said, my voice calm but resolute. Ascend Strategies will be acquiring Global Tech directly. Which, as I'm sure Dad has realized by now, effectively blocks Lin and Associates from any international expansion. My father slumped back in his chair. The weight of the consequences settled on him like a collapsing roof. Without this deal, without the capital and reputation boost, it was over. Lin and Associates would remain exactly what it had always been, a mid-sized regional firm, forever playing second fiddle to a company he never bothered to see coming. His daughter's company. "You can't do this," he whispered, voice cracking. "We're family." I paused at the door, turning back one last time. "Family," I repeated, as if tasting the word. "That's interesting. Because, according to the messages I got yesterday, I'm not successful enough to be part of this family." I tilted my head, letting the silence linger. "I wonder," I tapped a manicured finger to my chin, mock thoughtful. "Will I be successful enough for Christmas dinner now?" Not a word followed me out. Through the glass walls, I could see the chaos I'd left behind, my mother, quietly crying into a monogrammed handkerchief, my father, staring at the contract as if it had just turned to ash, and Danielle, once so flawless, collapsed into her seat, her carefully constructed world in ruins. Julia stepped into stride beside me as I walked back to my office. "That was intense," she murmured. "Are you okay?" I glanced at my phone. Yet another desperate message from my mother flashed across the screen. "Cancel the Christmas dinner." I smirked. "I have other plans." And just like that, the holidays got interesting. underscore 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 underscore. The aftermath unfolded exactly as expected, a flood of voicemails, text messages, even handwritten letters. Each one an attempt to rewrite the past, to bargain back my silence, my forgiveness, my name. Rachel, let's talk, just us girls. You're hurting your family. Stop this before it's too late. Please don't let your success destroy everything we've built. But while they scrambled, Ascend moved forward. We acquired global tech outright within the week, announced a new international HQ in Singapore, and secured partnerships with 3 multinationals who had once courted Lin and Associates. Their stock price plummeted. Business media had a field day. Lin legacy in crisis. Family drama derails expansion. Daughter's firm crushes former employer in brutal takeover. 1 week later, I sat reviewing our newest reports when Julia poked her head in. Your sister's here again, she said, tone flat. 3rd time this week. But, she's alone this time. No senator. I opened the security feed. Danielle stood in the lobby, but something was off. The polish was gone. Her shoulders slumped beneath a gray coat that looked more burdened than fashion. Her eyes were tired. I hesitated, then nodded. Send her up. She entered slowly, her gaze scanning the office she had once deemed beneath her. Nice place, she said quietly. Bigger than mine at Lin and Associates, though I guess that's not saying much anymore. What do you want, Danielle? She sank into one of the visitor chairs like someone exhaling after a long run. Senator Morgan called off the engagement. I raised a brow. The power couple couldn't weather a minor collapse? She gave a dry laugh. He said he couldn't be tied to a failing family firm. Apparently, I'm not good for his image now. I said nothing. The irony sat between us like a 4th person in the room. Dad's drinking again, she added after a beat. The board's questioning his leadership. Mom's friends are gossiping. She looked up, vulnerable for once. Everything's unraveling, Rachel. I leaned back in my chair, fingers steepled, letting the moment stretch. And now you're here, I said. In my office. Alone. Danielle swallowed hard. I didn't come to beg. I came to ask, what happens next? It's all falling apart, Danielle whispered, voice cracking. And it's all because of me. No, I cut in. It's falling apart because it was built on appearances, on status and ego, rather than anything real. Just like your engagement. She flinched. I deserved that. You deserved a lot more, I said, leaning forward, the anger I'd held back for years now sharpening each word. Do you have any idea what it was like to watch you all celebrate each other's milestones while I was treated like a disappointment? Do you remember Mom throwing a party when you made VP, while she couldn't even remember the name of my company? Danielle looked down, guilt tightening her jaw. We thought you were struggling. You never asked. I stood up, my carefully maintained composure finally cracking. Not once in 10 years did any of you ask what I was building. Not once. You just assumed I was failing, because it made you feel superior. Tears slipped down her cheeks, real ones this time. Not the kind she used to manipulate, to perform. I was horrible to you. Yes, I said simply. You were. Can you ever forgive me? I studied her for a long moment. Forgiveness isn't the issue, I said softly. Trust is. And trust? That has to be earned. Just then, my office door burst open. Julia's protests echoed behind my parents as they barreled in. Rachel, my father said, though his voice lacked its usual force. This has gone far enough. You've made your point. Have I? I replied, staying seated. You're successful, my mother blurted out. We were wrong. We see that now. You can stop this. Please. I laughed, but it was cold, empty. You think this is about proving I'm successful? I stood, walking slowly to the floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the city lights below. This isn't about punishment. This is about consequences, about finally making you understand that your words, your actions, your condescension, they had impact. They shaped me. They isolated me. We're your parents, my father said, his voice cracking. We were just trying to protect you. I turned around slowly. No, I said. You were protecting your image. I glanced between them. And now, look, your image is exactly what you made it, a crumbling firm, a broken engagement, and a family in crisis. Danielle's voice was quiet. What do you want from us? I considered the question. I wanted your support when I was building Ascend. I wanted your respect when I made it a success. I wanted to be seen as a daughter, not an embarrassment. I paused. But now? I don't want anything from you. My mother started crying, but I didn't move. I'd seen this show before. Please, Rachel. It's almost Christmas. Ah, Christmas. I let out a slow, cold smile. The dinner I wasn't invited to because I didn't fit the image? Tell me, does Senator Morgan still require a curated guest list, or has that changed now that he's jumped ship? My father stepped forward, desperate now. Name your price. Board seats. Stock options. Even majority control. We can bring you into Lin and Associates, officially. I shook my head, stunned that they still didn't get it. I don't want anything you have. Ascend is worth more than Lin and Associates could ever be. What I wanted was a family who valued me for who I am, not what I could give him. I pressed a button on my desk. Julia stepped in instantly. Please show them out, I said calmly. And have security update the no-entry list. Rachel, wait, my mother cried. We can fix this. No, Mom. My voice was sharp, final. You can't fix a decade of disregard with one apology. Actions have consequences. I watched them leave, their footsteps echoing down the corridor, heavy with a loss they never expected. As darkness fell over San Francisco, I stood in my office alone, the lights from the Bay Bridge flickering in the distance. My phone buzzed. Another message. This one wasn't from them. It was from Julia. Your 7 p.m. video call with Global Tech Japan is ready. I smiled and turned away from the past, for good. My phone buzzed, this time, not from my family. It was a message from Margaret Lee, my grandmother's closest friend. She was the only person, besides Julia, who had stood by me when I was working out of a shoebox office, cold calling clients, and sleeping under my desk. Heard about what happened with your family, the message read. Your grandmother would be proud. Christmas dinner at my place this year. We'll have hot pot and your favorite cake. I smiled, warmth rising in my chest as a weight I hadn't realized I was still carrying began to lift. Sometimes, family isn't defined by blood. It's defined by belief, by the people who see your worth long before the world catches up. The next morning, I called an emergency board meeting at Ascend Strategies. It was time. Time to reshape the industry, on our terms. I stood at the head of the table, outlining our most ambitious expansion yet, a sweeping acquisition strategy targeting 6 high-performing regional firms. The consulting landscape was about to change, and we were going to lead that change. Lin and Associates wasn't even on the list. As I clicked through the final slide, I thought briefly of their Christmas dinner. I could picture it, the pristine table setting, the uncomfortable silences they'd fill with too loud laughter, and the hollow toasts made in the senator's absence. All for show. While they clung to appearances, I was building something real. Not just a company, but a life. A life where I never had to pretend to be small to fit someone else's version of me. A week later, a small package arrived at my office. Inside was my grandmother's old silver business card holder, polished and gleaming. Tucked inside was a note in Margaret's neat handwriting. She always said you'd outshine them all. Looks like she was right. I placed it on my desk, right beside the Ascend logo. A reminder that success isn't about who applauds you at the top, it's about who believes in you at the start. The next time someone asked me about my family, I just smiled and said, I have a company to run. And honestly, that was worth more than any Christmas dinner they ever withheld. I built something they said I never could. I stood tall in rooms they never imagined I'd enter. And when the people who were supposed to love me most chose image over truth, I chose myself. If my story resonated with you, if you've ever been underestimated, dismissed, or told you don't belong, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below. Tell me your story. Tell me how you rose, how you're still rising. Or, if you're in the thick of it now, let this be a reminder, you're not alone. Support means more than applause when we're already winning. It means standing with people when they're just beginning to believe in themselves. If you believe in women carving their own path, in daughters reclaiming their power, in success that doesn't come with permission slips, then stand with me. Let's turn this comment section into a wall of support, strength, and hard-earned victories. And here's my advice to anyone trying to navigate a world that doesn't always see you clearly: stop asking for seats at tables built to exclude you. Build your own. Invest in yourself relentlessly. Choose the people who see you, not just the version of you that fits their expectations. And when success comes, let it speak quietly. Let your peace be the loudest thing in the room. Because at the end of the day, family isn't always defined by blood. It's defined by who shows up, consistently, honestly, and without condition. So now I ask you, what does success mean to you? Leave your thoughts, your advice, or simply a word of encouragement below. We rise higher when we rise together. And I'm listening. Rachel Lin, CEO, Ascend Strategies.